Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Ukraine prepares for elections amidst geopolitical changes. The U.S. conducts military operations in the Caribbean and Venezuela. María Corina Machado's daughter receives the Nobel Peace Prize. Epstein grand jury records will be released. Trump's cost of living proposals face skepticism. European nations seek ECHR reform for migration issues. Canada and the U.S. clash over trade and sovereignty. The U.S. will require 5-year social media history for travelers. Australia's social media ban is a global test. Tech companies are investing in India's AI sector. Silver prices reach record highs due to economic factors. A genetic mutation affects hundreds of children's health. The Republican Senate debates a healthcare bill. The FDA investigates potential vaccine-related deaths. Trump's views differ from battlefield reports regarding Ukraine. Ukraine's readiness for elections amidst shifting geopolitical dynamics. President Volodymyr Zelensky has reiterated Ukraine's readiness to hold elections, contingent upon security guarantees provided by international partners, primarily the United States and European allies. Following criticism from former U.S. President Donald Trump, Zelensky emphasized that the elections are a priority, though dependent on securing a safe environment amidst ongoing military operations. He announced plans to solicit legislative proposals to facilitate elections under martial law, acknowledging the significant practical obstacles posed by the war. The timing of this declaration coincides with ongoing discussions regarding a comprehensive peace plan. Zelensky stated intentions to present a revised proposal to the U.S. within the near future, following collaborative work with Trump's team and European counterparts. This plan, currently evolving through 3 distinct documents, a 20-point framework, security guarantees, and a recovery strategy, reflects a dynamic approach to achieving a ceasefire. Trump's persistent skepticism regarding Ukraine's leadership in the peace process has introduced a complicating factor. He continues to advocate for a negotiated settlement, often criticizing the pace of negotiations and questioning the Ukrainian government's commitment to a favorable outcome. His remarks have highlighted a growing rift between the U.S. and European perspectives on the conflict. Pope Leo expressed concerns about Trump's proposed peace plan, arguing it risks weakening the crucial alliance between Europe and the United States, emphasizing the necessity of European involvement in securing security guarantees for Ukraine. Despite the challenges, Zelensky remains committed to exploring all avenues for achieving peace, while acknowledging Ukraine's current limitations in reclaiming territories, notably Crimea. The ongoing discussions underscore the multifaceted nature of the conflict and the complex interplay of political, military, and diplomatic considerations shaping Ukraine's future. The pursuit of a stable and secure future for Ukraine hinges on securing international support and navigating the shifting geopolitical landscape. The security guarantees remain the central obstacle to holding elections and achieving a lasting resolution. U.S. military operations in the Caribbean and Venezuela, a complex and controversial campaign. The United States military is engaged in a multifaceted campaign involving strikes against alleged drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean, alongside heightened military activity near the Venezuelan coastline. This campaign has resulted in the deaths of over 80 individuals, primarily crew members of these vessels, and has sparked significant controversy regarding the legality and conduct of the operations. Initially, the U.S. Navy conducted several strikes against these boats, resulting in the survival of 5 individuals who were subsequently treated differently. 2 were detained and returned to their home countries. 1 was left adrift and presumed dead, and 2 others were killed in a follow-up strike. This inconsistent response has raised legal and ethical concerns. Simultaneously, the U.S. military has increased its presence near Venezuela, deploying F-A-18 Super Hornets and EA-18G Growler jets to patrol the Gulf of Venezuela. These actions are part of a broader strategy to pressure the Maduro regime, which has been accused of destabilizing the country. President Trump has repeatedly stated Maduro's days are numbered, and has not ruled out the possibility of deploying troops. The strikes against drug trafficking vessels have been met with criticism regarding their legality, with some suggesting they violate international law by targeting individuals who may be considered hors de combat. Concerns have been raised about the potential for civilian casualties and the lack of transparency surrounding the operations. The U.S. military maintains that these operations are justified as a response to Venezuela's drug trade and its destabilizing actions. However, the evolving situation, including the increased military activity near Venezuela and the controversial nature of the strikes, underscores the complexity and potential risks associated with this ongoing campaign. The U.S. Navy is currently focused on a reduced pace of strikes, but continues to monitor the situation. The deployment of the FD-18s and Growler jets near Venezuela appears to be a deliberate effort to signal resolve and exert pressure on the Maduro government. These actions are part of a broader strategy to demonstrate U.S. commitment to regional stability and counter illicit activities. María Corina Machado's daughter accepts Nobel Peace Prize amidst political turmoil due to ongoing travel restrictions imposed by Venezuela's government. María Corina Machado's daughter, Ana Corina Sosa Machado, accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her mother's behalf in Oslo. The prize recognizes Machado's tireless efforts to promote democratic rights and facilitate a peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy in Venezuela. Machado, in hiding since the disputed 2024 presidential election, communicated her intention to attend via audio recording, expressing gratitude for international support. The Norwegian Nobel Committee highlighted Machado's unwavering commitment to democratic principles, despite facing significant political persecution and travel bans. The Venezuelan government, under President Nicolas Maduro, strongly condemned the award, accusing Machado of inciting violence and collaborating with foreign powers. Government-aligned television channels refused to broadcast the ceremony, instead airing a statement from Maduro thanking protesters and reaffirming his position. Ana Corina Sosa Machado delivered a powerful speech emphasizing the importance of democracy for global peace and expressing hope for an orderly transition in Venezuela, envisioning a future where grandmothers settle children on their laps to tell them stories not of distant forefathers, but of their own parents' courage. She underscored the Venezuelan people's willingness to fight for freedom, stating, "To have democracy, we must be willing to fight for freedom." María Corina Machado's political journey began with the founding of SOMATE in 2002, a volunteer group advocating for political rights and monitoring elections. She later established Venti Venezuela in 2012, championing a free market economy and the rule of law. Machado faced numerous challenges, including being removed from the National Assembly and attempts to void her candidacy in the 2024 presidential election. Following the election, the United States, under President Donald Trump, initiated a pressure campaign against Maduro, deploying naval forces to disrupt drug trafficking. Machado actively sought international support and released a Freedom Manifesto outlining her vision for a new Venezuela. Machado's story is one of persistent resistance against authoritarian rule, highlighting the ongoing struggle for democracy in Venezuela and the global community's support for its pursuit. Epstein grand jury records to be released following court order. A federal judge in New York, Richard Berman, has issued a landmark ruling permitting the United States Department of Justice to release grand jury records stemming from Jeffrey Epstein's 2019 sex trafficking case. This decision represents a significant shift from the judge's earlier ruling, which had mandated the preservation of secrecy surrounding the files. The pivotal factor driving this change is a recently enacted law passed by Congress, mandating the public disclosure of grand jury materials related to Epstein's case. Judge Berman's latest order explicitly acknowledges the rights of the victims involved, emphasizing the need to safeguard their identities and protect their privacy. He asserted that the paramount considerations are the safety and privacy of these individuals. Epstein was formally charged with sex trafficking offenses in July 2019. Tragically, he passed away in a New York correctional facility only 1 month later, while awaiting his trial. The release of these previously sealed records is expected to provide crucial insights into the complex network of individuals and activities surrounding Epstein's alleged crimes. Legal experts anticipate that the documents will be subject to redaction to protect sensitive information, but the overall goal is to enhance transparency and allow for a more thorough investigation into Epstein's dealings. The decision underscores the ongoing legal scrutiny surrounding Epstein's case and the pursuit of justice for the victims. The Department of Justice is now tasked with implementing the court's order, navigating the complexities of redaction, and ultimately making the records accessible to the public. The release promises to generate considerable public interest and potentially lead to further legal challenges. Trump's efforts to address cost of living meet skepticism. President Donald Trump continues to promote his administration's efforts to alleviate the rising cost of living in the United States. Yet his claims are met with significant skepticism from voters and political figures alike. Recent rallies and public statements highlight a disconnect between Trump's messaging and the economic realities faced by many Americans. Despite claims of falling prices, particularly in fuel and eggs, broader concerns about food, housing, and healthcare persist. Trump's administration has attempted to counter these concerns through various policy changes, including removing tariffs on food products and rolling back fuel efficiency standards. However, these measures have not demonstrably impacted inflation rates, which remain elevated compared to pre-Trump administration levels. His self-assessment of an A++ grade on the economy has been widely criticized, particularly given persistent inflation and economic anxieties. Political figures, including Senator Bernie Sanders, have voiced strong opposition to Trump's economic narrative, emphasizing the ongoing struggles of working-class families. Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor has similarly expressed doubt regarding Trump's ability to effectively address the state's economy. Furthermore, CNN's Michael Smerconish weighed in, questioning the validity of Trump's self-evaluation. Several news outlets have reported on the ongoing challenges faced by American consumers, with rising prices across various sectors contributing to economic uncertainty. Hyundai and Rolls-Royce have announced significant investments in the United States, potentially driven by policy changes, but these developments are not immediately alleviating the pressures on household budgets. The persistent economic anxieties are particularly pronounced in states like Pennsylvania, where Trump's margin of victory in the 2024 election was narrow. This underscores the vulnerability of his support base to concerns about affordability and economic well-being. The situation is further complicated by the potential for policy decisions, such as tariffs, to have unintended consequences on business investment and economic growth. Ultimately, the narrative surrounding the economy remains deeply divided, with Trump attempting to frame his administration's efforts as a success while acknowledging that challenges persist and that significant work remains to be done. European nations pursue ECHR reform to address illegal migration. European justice ministers have agreed to initiate a process aimed at revising the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, to facilitate the deportation of illegal migrants. Following pressure from nations including Italy and Denmark, a political declaration is planned for a summit in May, addressing concerns about the treaty's impact on migration policies. This initiative stems from growing political divisions within Europe regarding the handling of small boat crossings in the English Channel. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has advocated for practical changes to the ECHR's interpretation, rather than outright withdrawal, arguing against the forces of hate and division. The Council of Europe, overseeing the convention, emphasizes a consensus-based approach. Acknowledging previous declarations have proven effective in tackling shared challenges. Key areas of discussion include Article 8, protecting the right to family life, and Article 3, prohibiting inhumane treatment, which critics claim hinders deportations. Furthermore, ministers are considering establishing returns hubs outside Europe to house migrants awaiting repatriation. Labour's domestic plan involves restricting the application of the right to family life clause in removal cases. While Conservatives and Reform UK advocate for withdrawal, Labour and Liberal Democrats oppose this move, citing the Convention's importance for safeguarding freedoms and addressing the immigration crisis. The potential reform represents a significant development in human rights law's application across Europe, with the specific details of the declaration holding crucial implications for migration cases. The initiative reflects ongoing tensions between human rights protections and border control measures, and the path forward remains uncertain as negotiations proceed towards the May summit. The debate highlights the complex interplay between legal frameworks and political priorities in managing migration flows. The pursuit of a consensus approach suggests a desire to avoid a complete overhaul of the ECHR, prioritizing incremental adjustments to address specific concerns. Canada-US trade and sovereignty disputes highlighted in recent developments. Recent developments involving Canada-US trade negotiations and a long-standing territorial dispute underscore ongoing tensions between the two nations. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's ambassador to the United States, has announced her departure ahead of a mandatory review of the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, STUSMMA, formerly known as the USMCA. Hillman's resignation, effective in the new year, is intended to allow for a new team to oversee the review process, which will determine whether QSMA is renewed or allowed to expire. Her tenure included navigating the COVID-19 pandemic, securing the release of detained Canadians, and managing trade disputes initiated by President Trump's imposition of tariffs on Canadian metals, lumber, and automobiles. Jamieson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, expressed confidence that Hillman's exit would not impact trade talks, while Justin Trudeau, former Canadian Prime Minister, praised her contributions. Simultaneously, a Canadian senator, Jim Quinn, has urged Ottawa to review the permitting of American boat tour groups visiting Makia Seal Island, a tiny, uninhabited island at the center of a century-old Canada-U.S. territorial dispute. The island, located in a gray zone between Maine and New Brunswick, is a migratory bird sanctuary and home to thousands of puffins and a Canadian Coast Guard lighthouse. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service authorizes two tour groups, Canadian Sea-Watch Tours and U.S.-based Bold Coast Charter Company, to visit the island, despite the ongoing sovereignty claim. Both sides have asserted ownership, adding complexity to the trade relationship. The review of QSMA will involve public hearings and stakeholder consultations, with Canada, the U.S. and Mexico potentially agreeing to renew the agreement or allowing it to lapse. Both Canada and Mexico have expressed a preference for maintaining the free trade agreement, and U.S. businesses share a similar view. The Senator's call for a review highlights the continued importance of asserting Canadian sovereignty over this strategically significant territory. U.S. to require 5-year social media history for tourist entry. The United States is considering a significant shift in its border control procedures, proposing that foreign tourists, particularly those from dozens of countries including the UK, provide a comprehensive 5-year history of their social media activity as a prerequisite for entering the country. This initiative, spearheaded by the Customs and Border Protection, CBP, and the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, aims to bolster national security, a key justification articulated by the Trump administration since its return to power. The proposal, outlined in a document published in the Federal Register, would affect individuals eligible for visa-free visits of up to 90 days under the Electronic System for Travel Authorization (ECHR) program. Driven by anticipated increases in tourism due to hosting the Men's Football World Cup and the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, the plan seeks to gather more extensive data on potential visitors. Beyond social media, the proposal mandates the collection of telephone numbers and email addresses used over the last 5 and 10 years, respectively, alongside information regarding family members. This represents a substantial expansion from the existing ESTA requirements, which primarily involve a one-off payment of $40. The initiative stems from an executive order issued in January, focusing on safeguarding the nation from foreign terrorists and other national security threats. Critics express concerns about potential obstacles to travel and the implications for digital rights. The move highlights a broader trend in border security measures and raises questions about the balance between national security and individual freedoms. The DHS has not yet issued a formal comment on the proposal. Australia's social media ban, a global test case. Australia's recent implementation of a ban on major social media platforms for users under 16 is generating significant global attention, prompting discussions and potential policy shifts in other nations, particularly the United States. The legislation mandates that age-restricted social media platforms verify users' ages through official documents or AI-based estimations, aiming to mitigate risks associated with online harms for young people. Failure to comply could result in substantial fines. Several U.S. states have already enacted similar measures, with Nebraska's governor signing a law requiring age verification and parental consent for social media accounts. Texas, Louisiana, and Utah have also passed legislation focusing on App Store verification and parental consent for downloads. These actions demonstrate a growing trend towards stricter controls on minors' access to online platforms. Tech companies are responding with their own protective measures, including take-a-break reminders, content restrictions, and parental controls. Instagram launched teen accounts relying on attestations and AI estimations, while YouTube and OpenAI are developing AI age prediction technology. Roblox is implementing ID or face scan verification for chat features. The Australian ban is viewed as a crucial test case, potentially influencing future regulations globally. Despite initial resistance from tech giants, the growing public concern regarding online safety for children is driving momentum for stricter controls. However, a nationwide ban in the United States appears unlikely due to congressional gridlock and First Amendment challenges. Despite these obstacles, the Australian legislation is expected to accelerate the development and implementation of age verification technologies and parental controls across the tech industry. The momentum suggests that similar actions may occur in other countries, marking a potential shift in the landscape of online safety for young people. The ongoing developments underscore the increasing scrutiny of social media platforms and their impact on children's well-being. Tech giants invest heavily in India's AI ecosystem. A wave of significant investment is sweeping through India's burgeoning artificial intelligence sector, spearheaded by global tech giants Amazon and Microsoft. Following Google's a $15 billion AI data hub initiative and Intel's collaboration with Tata Electronics, Amazon announced a $35 billion commitment by 2030, building upon its existing $40 billion investment, solidifying its position as the largest foreign investor in the country. Simultaneously, Microsoft pledged $17.5 billion, complementing an earlier $3 billion investment. This combined $52.5 billion investment underscores the international confidence in India's potential as an AI and cloud infrastructure hub. The investments will heavily focus on local cloud and AI infrastructure, including a new hyperscale cloud region in Hyderabad, slated for completion in mid-2026. Microsoft's commitment also incorporates access to its sovereign public cloud, offering tools to maintain data security within India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed optimism, highlighting the positive outcome of his meeting with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. India's strategic focus on semiconductor manufacturing is aligning with these investments, with state-backed and private projects aiming to establish a domestic chipmaking industry, bolstered by government subsidies. The country's vast internet user base and tech talent pool represent a significant market opportunity. While lagging behind global leaders like China and the US, India is attracting billions in investments in key computing technologies. Microsoft's expansion includes integrating AI into Indian government platforms, aiming to support approximately 310 million informal workers. This initiative is part of a broader $23 billion AI expansion across countries including Canada, Portugal, and the UAE, intensifying the competition between tech firms. India's sovereign AI model, expected to be unveiled in February next year, represents a further step in solidifying its position within the global AI landscape. The investments are expected to drive innovation and economic growth while addressing concerns surrounding water shortages and data security within the country's rapidly developing digital infrastructure. Silver prices surged to record highs driven by Fed rate cut expectations and tech industry demand. The price of silver has recently reached a record high, surpassing $60 an ounce in the spot market on Tuesday, fueled by anticipated interest rate cuts by the U.S. Federal Reserve and sustained high demand from the technology sector. This surge mirrors the recent performance of gold, which also achieved record highs earlier this year due to concerns about U.S. tariffs and the global economic outlook. Investors are increasingly shifting funds into precious metals, particularly gold and silver, when interest rates decline, as the relative attractiveness of holding cash or short-term bonds diminishes. The expected rate cut, anticipated for Wednesday, is a primary catalyst. Experts like Yeo Hui Chua from Nanyang Technological University explain that falling interest rates incentivize investors to seek assets considered safe haven investments, such as silver. This shift in demand directly impacts the price. Furthermore, the strengthening dollar has also played a role, making silver more competitive against other currencies. Gold's performance has provided a spillover effect, with investors seeking cheaper alternatives to the yellow metal. Gold has experienced a remarkable increase of over 50% this year, largely due to significant purchases by central banks globally. Platinum and palladium have also witnessed price increases this year, reflecting broader investor confidence in precious metals. The technology industry's continued demand for silver, driven by its use in electronics and solar panels, further exacerbates this upward trend, creating a situation where supply struggles to keep pace with the heightened demand. The combination of these factors is creating a powerful upward pressure on silver prices, solidifying its position as a key investment during times of economic uncertainty. European sperm donors' genetic mutation results in hundreds of children with increased cancer risk. A major investigation has revealed that a sperm donor, unknowingly carrying a cancer-causing genetic mutation, fathered at least 197 children across Europe over 17 years. The donor, who began donating in 2005, used his sperm at 67 fertility clinics in 14 countries, including Denmark, Belgium, and France. The mutation, linked to Li-Fraumeni syndrome, dramatically increases the risk of cancer, with up to 90% chance of development, particularly in childhood and later in life. The investigation, conducted by 14 public service broadcasters, uncovered that the donor's sperm contained up to 20% of the mutation. Several children born to the donor have already been diagnosed with cancer, with some developing multiple cancers. A French single mother, C.A. Line, whose daughter was conceived with the donor's sperm, expressed her concerns about the risk and the potential for future health issues. The European Sperm Bank admitted that limits on donor use had been breached, with Belgium allowing 38 women to produce 53 children from the same donor, and the UK limit of 10 families. The BBC reported that some British women had traveled to Denmark for fertility treatment using the donor's sperm, and the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, ECHR, was notified. Experts highlighted the challenges of screening for all genetic mutations and the reliance on international sperm banks. Professor Alan Pacey, a former sperm bank director, argued that tighter screening would severely limit donor availability. The European Society of Human Reproduction and Embryology has suggested a limit of 50 families per donor, though this is debated. Concerns have been raised about the social and psychological implications of having hundreds of half-siblings. The investigation underscores the need for stricter regulations and greater awareness regarding the potential risks associated with donor sperm use. The European Sperm Bank maintains that donor sperm offers a safer alternative for couples struggling to conceive, provided donors are screened according to medical guidelines. The case highlights the complexities of balancing reproductive freedom with the potential for genetic health risks. Republican Senate to vote on healthcare bill amidst premium concerns. The Senate is scheduled to hold a vote on a Republican-led healthcare bill this Thursday, an alternative to the Democratic proposal aimed at extending expiring Affordable Care Act tax credits. However, both bills face an uphill battle, lacking the 60 votes required for advancement due to a significant partisan deadlock. Republican leadership, spearheaded by John Thune, unveiled the Crapo-Cassidy bill, expanding health savings accounts for consumers, while explicitly excluding funds for gender-affirming care and abortions. Despite President Donald Trump's support for directing funds directly to patients rather than insurance companies, the bill's core strategy, avoiding the ACA tax credit extension, remains a point of contention. Meanwhile, Senator Lisa Murkowski expressed skepticism about the bill's ability to garner Democratic support, stating it doesn't address rising premiums. Republican leadership acknowledges the challenges, yet the bill's future remains uncertain. The impending expiration of the ACA tax credits at the end of the month poses a serious threat to millions of Americans, potentially leading to dramatically increased premiums. Adding to the pressure, Senator Chuck Schumer firmly labeled the GOP healthcare plan a non-starter, placing blame squarely on Republicans for the looming premium increases. Schumer emphasized the urgency of extending the tax credits and highlighted the Republican bill's failure to do so. He also asserted that the Democratic proposal is the only one that would prevent the credits from expiring. The situation underscores the intense political battle surrounding healthcare policy and the potential consequences of inaction. The CN article about a Pennsylvania home care worker's worries regarding rising health insurance premiums reflects the broader anxiety surrounding access to affordable healthcare and the vulnerability of those relying on the ACA for coverage. The core issue remains the lack of a bipartisan solution to avert the premium increases and ensure continued access to healthcare for millions. FDA investigates potential vaccine-related deaths across multiple age groups. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, is currently conducting a thorough investigation into potential deaths occurring across multiple age groups, prompted by earlier claims regarding deaths among children. This follows a statement made by a senior FDA official, Andrew Nixon, who asserted without supporting evidence that 10 children had died as a result of COVID-19 vaccinations. Nixon indicated the FDA's investigation is ongoing, but declined to disclose specific data sources or potential changes to vaccine approval processes. Dr. Vinay Prasad, the FDA's chief medical and scientific officer, initially presented an initial analysis examining 96 deaths, concluding that 10 were linked to COVID-19 vaccination. Prasad argued that COVID-19 was never highly lethal for children, and that its effects were comparable to those of other respiratory viruses, justifying the lack of annual vaccination efforts. This initial analysis has fueled controversy and raised questions about the agency's methodology. Over 700 million COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered in the United States since late 2020, a testament to the widespread vaccination campaign. Despite extensive testing and ongoing monitoring, serious side effects like anaphylaxis and myocarditis remain exceptionally rare. The Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System (VARS) is utilized to collect reports of deaths following vaccination, regardless of whether a causal link can be established. Following this analysis, the FDA plans to adopt a revised approval process for vaccines, demanding more robust evidence of safety and value before marketing. This includes stricter requirements for vaccines used in pregnant women and the necessity for trials specifically evaluating pneumonia vaccines, focusing on disease reduction rather than antibody production. Furthermore, the agency intends to revise the annual flu vaccine framework and honestly assess vaccine labels. The controversy is linked to concerns raised by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who previously founded the anti-vaccine group Children's Health Defense, and has repeatedly expressed doubts about vaccine effectiveness. His influence within the Department of Health and Human Services, CHHS, has led to funding cuts for mRNA vaccine development. The replacement of Vaccine Advisory Committee members at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and the inclusion of false claims linking autism and vaccines on the CDC website. The investigation underscores the ongoing debate surrounding vaccine safety and the importance of transparent data analysis within the regulatory process. Trump's shift battlefield stasis contrasts with President's pessimistic assessment of Ukraine's war effort. Recent statements from former President Donald Trump regarding the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia have sparked significant debate, directly contradicting assessments from US and European officials regarding the battlefield situation. Despite Trump's assertion that Ukraine is losing and that Russia holds the upper hand, intelligence reports indicate a largely static front line, with Russia making incremental gains, primarily focused on approaching key Ukrainian supply lines. These gains, however, come at a considerable cost in Russian military casualties. Ukrainian officials emphasize that Russia's territorial advances have been minimal, amounting to less than 1% of Ukrainian land since the invasion's commencement. This contrasts sharply with Trump's perspective, which suggests a rapid Russian victory. European officials share this assessment, highlighting Russia's primary objective to deny Ukraine its sovereignty and subjugate the nation. Despite the static battlefield, Ukraine is experiencing a gradual loss of strategic ground due to attrition and limited defensive capabilities. The situation is particularly challenging for Kyiv, with Russian forces pressing on the eastern front. Recent advances have centered around the city of Pokrovsk, a vital supply hub that has seen its role diminished due to intensified fighting. Trump's evolving viewpoint represents a dramatic reversal from his previous optimistic assessment following a meeting with President Zelensky at the UN General Assembly. Initially, Trump expressed confidence in Ukraine's ability to not only hold the line but also reclaim all lost territory. However, he has since repeatedly criticized Zelensky's approach and expressed frustration with the lack of progress in peace negotiations, suggesting Ukraine needs to accept things to avoid further losses. Concerns are growing among European officials that Trump's impatience could lead to him abandoning peace talks, potentially assigning blame to Ukraine and Europe. The shift in Trump's rhetoric underscores the complex and protracted nature of the conflict, highlighting the divergent perspectives and the significant challenges in achieving a resolution. The situation remains precarious for Ukraine, with continued pressure from Russian forces and the potential for a shift in US diplomatic support.